The continuous harvesting stage takes place from the second month of harvesting all the way to the fourth month of harvesting. That's the continuous harvesting stage. And during this stage, remember, during the early harvesting, which is like the 2 harvests, because this plant is usually harvested every 2 weeks. And therefore, the first 2 harvests, they have first 3 harvests in the first month, because of course we have the first harvest at 45 days. Then we have the other harvest during mid-month, and the other harvest toward the end of that month. So after 3 harvests, which is the early harvesting, we now have the continuous harvest. And you find during this stage, the plant is fully mature. The lower leaves are continuing to mature and they harden, they grow, they reach maturity, because you find that once you harvest for the first time, or you harvest now, 2 weeks later, you find that the leaves that are left, that's the lower leaves that are left, they are going to mature and they harden such that they reach the quality for harvest. And this quality for harvest is a quality, as mentioned before, that can be able to withstand the pressure of the harvesting, and also transporting to the market, and also be able to withstand all the physical handling without getting any physical injury. Because all those physical injury, if the leaf is succulent, is going to have physical injury, and this physical injury are going to make it have a short shelf life. Therefore, it is very important for it to reach the physical maturity and the hardening that is required. During this stage, we have the inner part of the plant. It is still producing smaller leaves, succulent, smaller leaves, because it is still growing. Because as I said, this plant will continue growing until it is even over 6 feet tall. And therefore, the inner part is still producing. The outer part leaves are maturing, the one that have reached the maximum height, size that is required. They now harden, they become mature, and they are ready for harvest. And then we have the middle leaves. They are still continue growing so that they can be able to reach the maximum size that is required, and then they harden. So it is a continuous process. And this process, it will need still a management aspect, and we are going to check the management aspect. Still be nutrition, pest, disease control, watering, and weeding. We are going to see what is needed in each aspect. And in terms of nutrition, you find you have already given, by the time the plant reaches this stage, the plant, you have given it all the nutrient that is required. It has developed all the requisite roots. The root system is very well developed. Therefore, it is able to get nutrients from the soil. And therefore, during this stage, there is only you only need to give basal fertilizer, supplementation of CAN. That is a nitrogenous fertilizer, for example, CAN, because the plant will still need a lot of nitrogen so that it can be able to produce the leaves. And you find during this stage, you find the plant is able now to survive on its own. So long as there is water, rain fed is there, or maybe you are doing irrigation water, the plant is going to produce, to take up nutrients from the soil and be able to grow. But it is very important to be able to note some of the changes in color, because if the plant instead of being a deep jungle green or deep green, you find that the plant is now starting to become yellowish, and you are giving enough water, or you find that the inner part of the plant is not growing very well, the leaves are reducing, and maybe it is just the 3rd month after harvesting, then that is an indication that the level of nitrogen is going low, and therefore you need to add. But for most places, if the soil is very fertile, the plant will be able to get all the nutrient that it needs, growing very well into maximum required size of the leaves, and be able to grow, and continual harvest is going to be done. But at the beginning of the 3rd month, or maybe in the middle of the 3rd month, that's when a nitrogenous fertilizer can be applied. And this secondary supplementation is usually done immediately after harvesting. As I have told you, harvesting is done every 2 weeks. After every 2 weeks, once harvesting is done, then we have now application of the crop protection products, including the secondary supplementation using a nitrogenous fertilizer and also a compound fertilizer. Because remember here, we have the plant that is still need to be maintained, the roots still need to be maintained, the stem needs to be maintained, the leaves need to be maintained. And therefore, a compound foliar fertilizer, for instance, that has NPK 24-24-18, for instance, with added micronutrients, is very important so that you can be able to supplement and be able to take care of the crop. And a nitrogenous fertilizer is usually applied this week, then the following week you can apply the compound fertilizer. And a calcium is usually added. Calcium, you may find that the NPK compound fertilizer may have an added calcium as an ingredient, but if it is not sufficient, you can be able to add the nitrogen fertilizer or the compound fertilizer, then you add calcium as an added foliar fertilizer. And calcium is very important because it is a component that usually comes to the leaf, then it toughens the leaf. It makes the leaf to be hard so that it can be able to withstand the handling during harvesting, transportation, and even at the market. It is very important so that it can be able to maintain the shelf life, because this is what is required. Because if you have, remember you're harvesting for almost 6 months. If you harvest and then you give your customer leaves that are not going to stay for long in the market, that have low shelf life, the customer will not come to you again. But if you give, your leaves have enough calcium, you're going to find that the leaves are going to stay longer in the market. They're going to have good shelf life. And you're going to find that your leaves or your cakes are going to be in demand, and the buyers are going to come back because of the quality that they have. So it's very important. Calcium is very important to be able to apply it as a foliar fertilizer at this time. And therefore, that's the supplementation, secondary supplementation of nutrient that is required during this time. And now going to pests and diseases. The same pests and diseases that we mentioned during the early harvesting, the maturity stage, are still the same one that are going to attack. And here we are talking about the sucking pests such as the thrips and the aphids. And then we have the chewing pests such as the caterpillars, the bollworm, the diamond back moth. And these pests, the challenge is at this time, if they attack, you find the first thing, they're going to lower the quality of the leaf, the shelf life of the leaf, especially the chewing pests. Once they chew, they are going to cause holes on the leaves, and those sorts of the leaves, that's where the rotting bacteria are going to get in, and therefore the plant or that leaf is going to have low shelf life. It may get even damaged before even it reaches the market, and therefore it is very important to check on this pest so that at this stage it is pest free. Every 2 weeks, once harvesting is done, scouting should be done so that if there are aphids, if there are any other pest that is trying to attack, then you use the requisite active ingredient as shared during the earlier stages. And in terms of diseases, the same diseases may attack. At this moment, you find if you had controlled very well the black rot, at this moment it would be a big challenge because you have controlled it very well. The plant has developed the requisite defense mechanism to be able to control this disease. And therefore, at this moment, you won't be needing a lot of control. But if you can be able to check and see that it is emerging, the disease is trying to attack, then what you do, you apply copper-based fungicide to be able to control the black rot. And especially once you harvest, you can be able now to have this copper-based fungicide, and then the areas where it has been harvested, you are able to spray on the stem where harvesting has been done, so that that wound can be able to heal very well. That will be a very good control for black rot. The other diseases, such as down mildew and ring spot, are supposed to be controlled if they are there. If they are not there, then only foliar feed can be sprayed plus insecticide. You may find at some point you only spraying the foliar supplementation because your scouting has shown there are no disease, there are no pests, and therefore you are able to even harvest these kales without use of any spray chemical or crop protection chemical. During this harvesting stage, remember it's very good to maintain the spray interval, the pre-harvest interval, so that by the time you spray and then 2 weeks are over so that you can harvest, you find the level of chemicals in that plant has gone down to the required level. And most of the spray chemicals that are usually sold, you usually have a pre-harvest interval 7 to 14 days, and we usually really advise you use the 7-day pre-harvest interval, so that by the time this crop you're harvesting after 14 days, then there would be a big challenge. In terms of weeding, you're going to find that the leaves have covered the ground very well. Still at this stage, it has covered the ground very well. The weeds have been suppressed, and therefore there'll be no need for weeding. But you find in some areas where maybe the spacing was not that close, and you find sunlight is reaching the ground, you're going to find weeds are becoming a bit significant, and therefore using a hand implement, you are going to do the weeding as shown and be able to control the weeds. In terms of watering, still this stage needs water. If rain-fed water is not, rainfall is not sufficient, then you have to do supplementation through irrigation, so that this plant can continue having the water, growing the leaf to the required size, so that you are able to get the required harvest.